All right, everybody, you might be wondering, what are important article features? What do I put in my article? Or how am I graded on my article? These are all good questions, so I want to address some of those things today. I want us to look at some real professional articles online and make a checklist, a list of things that we see in real articles, and then make sure that when we write our articles, we have those exact same things in our list. So let's take a look. I'm going to go to Canadian Geographic online, and right away I see the titles of articles that I could choose from. A special message from Alex Trebek. They turned their farm into a forest. 15 years later, it's thriving. Another, farming without fossil fuels on Prince Edward Island. Slaughtered and skinned, the disturbing truth about South Africa's captive bred lion industry. I want to read this article, and lots of times the title tries to grab attention. It's got words in there, disturbing and slaughtered and skinned. I think the one there about Alex Trebek had the word special, right? Special in it. So they're trying to use words that really grab attention. Thriving, okay? And so do that in your title. Start a list. My title should grab attention. It needs words that slap you in the face. That's really what it's all about. So I'm going to click on this article and take a closer look. Slaughtered and skinned. It's disturbing. Yeah, that title really does work. I see a photo right off the bat. You can have photos in your article if you want, but you don't have to. Not every article on earth has photos in it, so that's optional. If you do have a photo, I see that there's a caption underneath the photo to explain where you got it from. You should do that as well. If you do add a photo to your article, it's going to push your writing onto page 2, okay? So I'm looking for 1 page of solid writing, and then if you add a photo, it's going to make your article move on to page 2, okay? But photos are optional. You don't have to put them in there if you don't want to. Continuing on, I see the author's name and date. Add that to your checklist. You have to have your name and the date in your article. I see paragraphs. I'm not even reading anything, and these paragraphs are popping off the page at me. They're really clearly identified, so they've got white space between the paragraphs so I can clearly see where they are. Paragraphs exist. You need to have paragraphs in your article. If you handed in your article and it was one long paragraph, you'd get a D. You can't do that. That is never done, okay? There's always paragraphs. And what about paragraph length? So here's short paragraphs, lots of short ones, but there's some long ones as well. What is the exact length? So I actually took some time before this video to count the number of sentences in this article, and the shortest one is a 1-sentence paragraph, and the longest one is 7. And I've been asking my students to count the number of sentences in paragraphs for years now, and it's always the same, 1 to 8. 1 to 8, that's the average. And so you should do that. As you make your paragraphs, make sure they're not too long. 8 sentences is probably the maximum. So if you handed in an article and you had a paragraph that was 20 sentences long, I'd have to challenge you on that and say, why did you do that? So lots of times these authors, Samantha Pope, she's writing paragraphs that have themes, and there's going to be another video down below that explains how to structure an article, and in there we're going to talk about paragraphs with themes. But just make sure you're writing in paragraphs, and don't let anybody push you around about paragraphs. If somebody ever said to you, you're writing an essay for me and you have to have an opening paragraph that has exactly 4 sentences, that doesn't exist in the work world. That's not real, okay? Anywhere from 1 to 8 sentences, that's what we see. So that's what I want you to do as well. What else? I do see these subheadings here. And again, they're bolded. They're optional. Not every article has them, but this one does. So if you want to use subheadings, go ahead. If you don't want to, then you don't need them. They're obviously helpful. They explain what the next little section is about. So totally up to you. Add that to your checklist if you want. Let's talk about how to open an article. What do we do with the opening paragraph? Let's read this one. Scouted, shot, then sold. Almost all captive bred lions in South Africa face a similar fate. Born to entertain tourists, the lions are eventually killed in canned hunts or skinned for their bones. Wow, shocking. Look at all these verbs at the start. Scouted, shot, sold. This is an action paragraph. It's clear that we're jumping into some really kind of ugly action. But you've got to do something like that with your opening paragraph. Again, it's got to grab attention, but it's not just action. There's so many options, but you need to decide on a way you're going to open it and be able to explain it clearly. Don't just start writing something. Have a purpose. And so this one is action, but you could have other things like describe a problem. You could get into a problem description. You could start with conversation. You could start with quotes and what somebody said. You could start by asking deep questions. A first paragraph that's really thought-provoking and has lots of deep questions, or a very detailed description. Maybe you're describing a scene or a landscape. And so whatever you do, just do it on purpose and be able to explain what you're doing. So add that to your checklist. Open on purpose. I should be able to explain what I'm doing, okay? We should probably talk about the closing paragraph as well. So the opening paragraph and the closing paragraph are the two most important paragraphs. Let's see what Samantha Pope, she's the author, does in her close. Wow, she's got a subheading here on what needs to be done next. It's almost like I paid Samantha Pope here. This is crazy. That sums it up perfectly. When you write your closing paragraph, almost always, and this is in many work world documents like emails and letters, reports, almost always it's what's the next step. You don't want the person reading to just try and imagine what to do next. This is the work world. It really helps somebody when you can tell them what's the next action that needs to be done, or what's the next step? What do we need to think about moving forward? This is a great way to close an article and almost all work world documents. So it's very different because an essay in school, usually the closing paragraph is some kind of a summary or a recap of everything you just said above, which is kind of like a repeat. In work world writing, there's almost no repeats because we don't want to waste people's time. What's the next step, or what's the next thing to think about? That is probably the best way to close an article. So well done, Samantha Pope. Add that to your checklist. As we look into sentences, we've had so many videos about sentence structure and punctuation, but they're real. You got to start every sentence with a capital, end with some kind of punctuation. Periods and question marks obviously are most common. Exclamation marks, they almost don't exist in real articles. They're very, very rare. Instead, they use exciting words. So exclamation marks, they're okay, but they're very rare. Same with the ellipse, the 3 dots. It just means more is being said. I don't even think we've talked about it in this course. They're so rare. But 3 dots means I'm saying something but not saying everything. More should be said here. And so again, they're very rare, but you can use them if you want. I also see capital letters all over the place, and we've talked about capitalization. So make sure if you don't know, double check, go to Owl Purdue, go back and look at my videos about capitalization if you want, but you got to have capital letters in there. There's also some very cool words. Stomach churning. Rumors is another one I see here. Disturbing. Slaughterhouses. There's some great. Paranoid. Okay, so we want to use words that are, again, exciting. They keep our attention. So try that. Take the words that you've written and see if you can choose a few of them and spice it up a little bit. Don't go overboard. Don't put one crazy word in every sentence. People can tell that you're pushing it too far, especially if the word's super big and you don't know what it means. You got to have a nice little balance and keep it natural if you can do that. What else? Ooh, what's this red text? So here, it's a hyperlink. I see one there. I see another hyperlink here and another one here. So what are hyperlinks all about? Let's look at this sentence here. When lions are slaughtered and skinned, their bones enter the global wildlife trade. So hyperlinks, I do an entire video about hyperlinks in article. You add them to your list. You have to have hyperlinks in your article. And there's 2 reasons behind them. You really need to watch my video where I explain it in detail because that's how we cite our writing, right? We don't have bibliographies and works cited on professional articles online in magazines. There's none of that, but they use hyperlinks to cite their information. So you're going to need to do that as well. Please watch the video about hyperlinks. I don't want anybody plagiarizing or getting a 0 on their article. That's an important video to watch as well. I think that's a great list to start with. Those are definitely the important features of an article. Make sure you add those to your article when you create it. And of course, let me know if you got any questions. We'll talk to you more later.